Rain slicks the grimy Gotham gargoyle. Below, a man in a deerstalker hat examines a chalk outline, his eyes scanning every detail with an unnerving, inhuman precision. He doesn't see the hulking shadow detaching itself from the stone above him. A gravelly voice cuts through the storm. "You're trespassing in my city," it growls. The detective doesn't look up, merely pointing a gloved finger at a nearly invisible scratch on the pavement. "Then your city, sir," he replies without a hint of fear, "has a far more interesting class of criminal than you are capable of catching. There are minds that operate on a different plane, intellects so vast they redefine human potential. And then there is the darkness of Gotham City, a place that breaks even the greatest of minds. The case that drew them together was an enigma, a puzzle box wrapped in a murder. A high-ranking judge, known for his corruption, was found dead in his penthouse, locked from the inside with no signs of forced entry. The only clue: a single, unfamiliar feather resting on his chest. For the GCPD, it was a dead end. For Batman, it was a Tuesday. But for a mysterious consulting detective from London, flown in by a desperate city council, it was a symphony. Sherlock Holmes arrived in Gotham and saw it not as a living nightmare, but as the ultimate data set. He disregarded the city's gothic dread, the atmosphere of fear that Batman cultivated as his greatest weapon. To Holmes, fear was a variable that clouded judgment. He began his investigation with pure, cold logic. He analyzed the mud on the street, the air currents of the high-rise, the manufacturing origin of the victim's clothes. He deduced the victim's habits, his secret fears, his enemies, all from the sterile environment of the crime scene. He saw the case as a three-pipe problem, a complex but ultimately rational equation waiting to be solved by a superior intellect. He worked in the light, interviewing witnesses with a disarming charm that made them reveal secrets they didn't know they had. Batman, from the shadows, observed this interloper with growing frustration. He saw Holmes's methods as dangerously naive, a relic of a more civilized age that had no place in a city of monsters. Batman's Gotham was not a rational place. It was an open wound, and its criminals were not logical puzzles, but rabid animals. His investigation involved no charm, only fear. He descended into the grimy underbelly of the city, crashing through warehouse windows, dangling informants from rooftops, and using his formidable technology to trace the feather to a network of underground smugglers. To Batman, the who and how were secondary to the why and the brutal justice that must follow. He saw Holmes as a tourist, a brilliant man playing a game in a city where the stakes were life and death. Their paths inevitably crossed. Holmes, having deduced the killer's likely point of entry through a complex analysis of architectural blueprints and wind patterns, arrived at an abandoned aviary. Batman, having beaten the information out of a terrified underling, crashed through the skylight moments later. They stood in the dusty, feather-strewn darkness. The master of deduction and the master of intimidation, face to face with their suspect, a former ornithologist, ruined by the judge, who had used a trained vulture to drop a poisoned dart through a ventilation shaft. The case was, in essence, solved. But the real conflict had just begun. Holmes saw a broken man, a tragic figure to be handed over to the flawed but necessary mechanism of the law. He stepped forward to reason with him. Batman saw a murderer who had preyed on the city's corruption, a symptom of the disease he had sworn to fight. He stepped forward to deliver his own brand of justice. In that moment, they weren't allies, they were ideological opposites. Holmes believed that the system, however imperfect, could be understood and navigated with logic. Batman believed that the system was broken beyond repair, and that only fear and overwhelming force could keep the darkness at bay. The ornithologist was their prisoner. But he was also the chessboard upon which the Dark Knight and the great detective played their final silent game for the soul of the city. Batman's dark justice proved effective in the monstrous city of Gotham, but his methods rely on the fear of a man. In the distant future, another dark city is policed by an even more terrifying form of justice. An entire corps of judge, jury, and executioners. And the greatest of them all, Judge Dredd, operates under a single, unbreakable principle that makes Batman's code look merciful. The law is absolute, and all who break it shall be judged.